As you might know, my name's Robert Brennan. I'm one of the co-directors of the COVID Medical Network. We've rebranded ourselves as the Australian Medical Network now because we are expanding our scope to cover more than COVID because, as I always say, it's about much more than a virus. Also involved with the Red Union Group and with TNT Radio. And I want to give a shout out to the Queensland Health Professionals Association. It's wonderful that they're here today and that they've got a stall. Okay, so my little talk is called The Good News and the Bad News. The bad news is the crowds today are way down compared to that wonderful rally in late 2021. Remember, before the December the 17th mandates came in, when we would have been many tens of thousands of strong in the Botanical Gardens. We're all there, filled with energy. We don't have that sort of crowd today. But there's good news. That energy still lives out there in the people we know and love and who can't be with us today, and it's here today with us. It's a flame that hasn't been extinguished, and despite it's been the rain that threatens to fall on us, it burns still today here with us. And it can grow again if it's needed, and it will be needed. So now the more bad news is the election, because it's the first rally after the election. Now, even the most politically cynical of us hoped that the so-called freedom parties would win a few seats. We would have predicted that a few freedom candidates would be in both the upper house and lower house. I predicted that maybe there might be a dozen in the lower and upper house. Okay. But instead, out of 151 lower house seats, freedom parties won 0. And out of 40 available seats out of the 72 in the upper house, the Senate, only 2 got through. One of those was Pauline Hanson, who returned, but only just. And I know that Tricky has an issue with the One Nation. So the extent to which Pauline Hanson is quote-unquote a Freedom Party fighter, she got in. Then there was Ralph Babbitt, a Palmer Party, United Party candidate down in Victoria. And he got in only just. $100 million was spent and one candidate got in. All right. We got smashed at the election. But there's good news. The good news is, along with the Greens and the Teals on the kind of the eco-communist, misanthropist sort of side of the spectrum, there's us on the other side, the freedom parties, the freedom people. All right. And we perhaps called an end and hopefully forever to the duopoly. Because Liberal and Labor got 36 and 32% respectively of the primary vote. That's well and truly put them in the minority camp now. We broke the duopoly. And for the first time, we discovered our numbers. In most electorates, 10 to 20% of the primary votes went to the freedom parties. As disunited as we were, it went to us. And so you can put a conservative estimate that we are 15% of the population. Probably more if you count those of us who voted informally or just thought, screw it, I don't trust democracy, it's all a scam, I'm not going to turn up at all. So we've got some numbers. All right. Now, revolutions, and I'm not here advocating for violent revolution here, but revolutions have been won by a hell of a lot less than 15%. If we take a march through history, we'll see you only need about 5 to 10% of a noisy, committed minority who keep on moving forward, and that's how you win revolutions. All right? So we have to roll the spirit of the Ottawa truckers, the French yellow vesters, the Dutch tractor driving farmers, the common folk of the Sri Lankan movements, and the spirit that we have within us this last 2 years. We've got to roll it all into us and keep it going. And we've also got to roll into the spirit of ourselves, people like Jenny, the lady who has had a candlelight vigil every Wednesday night outside the Brisbane Children's Hospital for 53 weeks straight. You know, that's the spirit that we've got to take with us. All right. Now, more bad news. We remain, as insane as it sounds, in our new Chief Health Officers, by his dictate, we remain under a state of emergency. There's no objective state of emergency, but we remain under a state of emergency. By hook or by crook, they got the jabs in most of the arms of the nation. The preparation for the wealth transfer is more or less complete, and the whole oligarchy are laughing all the way to the bank, right? We are now going to face either hideous inflation, mortgage stress, or currency devaluation, or all three, and those at the top won't suffer any of it. They won the battle out there in that world. But the good news is that some of us woke up fast and we held out through the worst of it. Despite the loss of employment, the loss of employability, despite all the suffering. At Astra per Aspera, we won the battle in here and in here. We won the battle of our consciences. And so credit to all of you for winning that battle. All right. Now, more bad news. I'll be finished soon. Maybe not deliberately, but a very successful kind of Darwinian campaign was waged and won. An ideological selection process. Just as a case in the hallowed halls of Canberra, they managed to get anybody with a freedom kind of loving ideology, and they managed to squeeze them out of the universities and most of the professions, just as they've done in government, right? So now they've got in those sectors pretty well almost a pure sample of the sheep that they want. That's going to be bad news for us in the future. But the good news is that they caused many of us to grow up, and grow up fast, and to move out of the system's house. Many people are now discovering that they don't need government indoctrination factories, otherwise known as schools. You need good teaching, you need good parenting, but we don't need that. Many people are discovering that they don't need to live in bohemian bourgeois Melbourne under Daniel Andrews to say that they have a culture. Many people are discovering that they can grow their own food, that they can, you know, there's talk about alternative health delivery systems. You know, forcing us to unplug from the matrix made us more dangerous, you know? All right, now, more or less the last set of good news and bad news. Bad news, many people think that they can now travel, they can go to the restaurant or the cinema, and they can maybe even return to work, although not all of us, in any meaningful way. They think it's over. Now, I believe that this pandemic has, and I've said this from the beginning, has been a symptom of many a social pathology, from the culture and cult of safetyism to the ongoing march of technocracy towards a surveillance and a social credit state, and to economic fascism masquerading as stakeholder capitalism or public-private partnerships, right? Okay. And I believe that these 2 years are just the beginning, and we're in for a battle all the way down to Agenda 2030. You know, this is just the beginning. And so, there's good news though. The mandates, where they were dropped and when they were dropped, and the freedoms that we have now, however fragile they are, we might not have had them at all if it wasn't for the likes of you fighting as you have this past couple of years. So credit to you. Okay. You might also remember that in 2020, the very suggestion that the virus might have emerged from a lab, the very suggestion that the World Economic Forum was anything but a talk fest for elites, the very suggestion that Bill Gates was anything but a well-intentioned philanthropist, was met with just, no, you're just conspiracy theorists, you're insane. But now the cracks have well and truly started to form. Now that's not so crazy in many of the minds of the mainstream. That's once again because of the likes of us pushing forward. saying what is the truth and not backing down. All right. So the tide's turning, but they are counting on us to losing momentum and to plugging back in the matrix. We can't let that happen. So I could quote Seneca, I could quote Shakespeare, but instead I'm going to quote Rocky Balboa, right? You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. So let's keep moving forward. Thank you very much.